The Bengals are expected to draft a running back in the 2023 NFL Draft. Where will they take one? Who should they consider? Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs. We will discuss those guys and so much more, including some late rounders with Joe Goodberry right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to CBT. I'm James Rapien. He is Joe Goodberry. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and buckle up because the NFL Draft is almost here. And thanks to all 34,000 plus of you that have subscribed, we reached that milestone earlier this week. We'll hopefully continue to grow as we bring you draft coverage from Paycor Stadium next week. And these draft breakdowns from Joe Goodberry, make sure you follow him at Joe Goodberry. And let's dive into the running back spot, Joe, because for the first time in a few years now, the Bengals clearly targeting running back. They've looked at a lot of these guys. They met with Jahmyr Gibbs at the Combine, for example. I know they've talked with Charbonnet, a lot of different running backs. How do you view this class as a whole? And are any of these guys worthy of the 28th overall pick? Because that's been a big topic. Should the Bengals consider a running back at 28 if one of the top guys is there?
I think it's a really good class, but I think it's a bunch of, for the most part, running back by committee types. And if you're okay with that, and if you're open to that idea, which I think most modern offenses are, we haven't seen the Bengals fully employ that, even though they did use Samaje Perine a lot. I don't think they saw them as interchangeable pieces. I think if they're more open to that, they'll see a lot more value in this running back class throughout. I think there'll be guys that can help and contribute deep into day 3. As for pick 28, I think Bijan Robinson is clearly worth it. Probably a consensus top 3 player in this entire class. Probably number 1, to be honest with you. With everything that goes in the profile, he spits him out as probably the only elite player in this class as a prospect. Having said that, I don't think he'll be there at 28. That's why I really haven't given too much thought about it, because I just think there's too many opportunities where somebody will take him before the Bengals are even on the clock. Because look around draft guides or listen to people that are in the know, and they say there's about 15 to 20 actual first-round graded players this year. Bijan is going to be consensus in that group, meaning at what point between pick 15 and 28 is the team going to say, hey, he's the last first-round guy left on the board. We can't bypass this value and take Bijan Robinson. So I don't think he'll be there. And then the other guy would potentially be Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not sure if he's worth 28. He may be an emergency scenario where no quarterbacks go in the first round, or maybe just one, similar to last year, and maybe you're deeper in the pool than you expected to be. I think he would be on that back half of the group that you would consider at 28.
Yeah, I think the path, and we've talked about this, the path for Gibbs. Bijan would obviously be BPA, and it would make sense. And I don't really want to debate that. I'm glad we're in lockstep there. For Gibbs would be, let's say they're out on Kalijah Kancey. They say his arms are too short, and it's as much hype as he's getting, and I know a lot of fans like him. But let's say they're out on him, right? And he falls, and Jahmyr Gibbs is there. But a lot of the top corners are gone, and maybe they're not in on one of them. Last year, it was, they're going to take Andrew Booth. They're going to take Andrew Booth. And it was, what if it's Deonte Banks who falls and they're just not in? Or Joey Porter Jr. and they're just not as in as some of the other guys. And I'm speculating. But if you're looking at Brian Brzee and Jahmyr Gibbs and you're just out on Kancey and you can't trade down, I think you could at least see the path to that, or I could see the path to them taking Gibbs. And I think he would have a huge impact right away. I get people devalue running back, but he's a perfect fit, to me at least, a perfect fit in their offense. I think he would work really well.
He would add a lot of speed, explosiveness. He would help in the receiving game. I think he's a really natural receiver, can pluck the ball away from his body, transition to a runner very quickly. He can be elusive in the open field. I don't know if they would see him as an every down player, so that's why I wonder if they will even consider it there. Like I said, it have to be an emergency scenario. I think with the first pick, you're looking for a guy that's going to play 800 plus snaps for you, which most running backs don't, especially in today's NFL. So I wonder if they would even Bijan, the only guy after that, they probably won't consider it unless it's a trade back scenario, something we haven't really discussed or envisioned yet. But if they do fall back 5 or so picks, yeah, I could see that. Then you take Gibbs because you got a bonus pick later. And we see the Bengals when they have traded back in recent years, they've kind of treated that pick plus the bonus pick a little bit differently and have drafted maybe a guard earlier than they would normally, or a nose tackle with that bonus pick. It's usually positions that you don't value very highly.
Joe, you have Bijan Robinson 1, Jahmyr Gibbs 2. That's consensus. A lot of analysts have it that exact same way. Do you have Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA 3 on your board?
I've got 3 guys tied on tape. So I gave a 78 grade, which is a strong second round consideration, not including value of the position. But I gave it to Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears out of Tulane, and Israel Abanikanda out of Pitt. I think all 3 guys could be 1A type backs where they're your lead back. Each guy has their own deficiencies. I don't think Charbonnet's got the long speed, elusiveness that you look for, and a guy that's a game breaker, but he's a bell cow size. Tyjae Spears can be the receiving type with the elusiveness and the speed, but doesn't have the size really that you look for in a guy that's going to carry the ball 200 plus times a year. So maybe he's more of the Giovanni Bernard role. Again, that was another one where they got an extra pick and they spent it on a running back for the Carson Palmer trade to go back one spot there. But
38th overall.
Yeah, and then Abanikanda has the size at 215 with the game-breaking long speed, but he's not the most elusive guy, and he doesn't have much receiving production. So it's hard to know what he'll be in the NFL. So they're all missing something, and it's why they're not higher on the board. But I think could be in consideration starting at pick 60 and maybe even into 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, I like Abanikanda if you could find a pass catcher as well and double dip. And let's go into some of these other guys, 4th round, 5th round. Who else stands out? Because history tells us the Bengals would love to address running back in round 2. Whether you look at Joe Mixon, Jeremy Hill, you mentioned Giovanni Bernard, Corey Dillon, it goes on and on. I'm probably missing one, but they prioritize that position more than other teams. And so the trade down with Gibbs, I think certainly on the table, depending on who's there and in the situation. Charbonnet, a lot of people have penciled him in at 60 in different mocks. But let's say they miss out on, at least in the first 2 rounds, round 3 through 5. Who stands out, guys that we haven't mentioned that could potentially fit in some form or fashion?
Yeah, and the guy you were forgetting was Kenny Irons out of Auburn. And
Kenny Irons, that's right. Because he got injured. He's easy to forget.
We never got to see him. And Chris Perry was a 1st round pick as well, right around that time. So, yeah, they value the running back position, which makes me think they'd love to force that pick at 60. I don't know that the value lines up. The next guys on the board are probably Tank Bigsby, maybe Roschon Johnson, Chase Brown, maybe it's Kendre Miller, maybe it's Dwayne McBride, Zach Evans from Ole Miss. I think all of these guys have issues in their game going from the top down. Tank Bigsby, for me, when I watched him, the team around him, I struggled with the evaluation. There are a lot of people that really like him. I struggled with him because the team around him was so bad that there's maybe 3 or 4 snaps a game where I actually can evaluate him. And I think it broke him a little bit, where in terms of vision, patience, timing, being a creative runner, you don't get to see it. Where I think the opposite is true with Kendre Miller out of TCU, where he had a lot of good blocks for him. So you got to see him flourish in terms of being patient, setting guys up, displacing and manipulating linebackers in the second level, and then being a super creative runner once he gets to that second level and making guys miss. And when I mean creative, I mean he'll bowl you over, he'll try to juke you, he'll try to jump over you, stiff arm, swat you away, spin move, whatever it takes. He's going to gain extra yards after contact. And I think the guy that is probably the most underrated, but I think people like him, and I only say underrated because he was behind Bijan Robinson. He may have been a stud running back anywhere else, and that's Roschon Johnson. And he's one of the few guys that actually did get to pass protect, catch the ball, run inside in gap schemes out of shotgun. He doesn't have the speed. He's about as fast as Samaje Perine. So do you want to go that route with a guy that really has everything else, just doesn't have the long speed? I think he's probably a 3rd or 4th round pick as well.
Is he Zach Charbonnet light, Roschon Johnson, but with proven pass blocking chops? Like you saw it more.
Yeah.
Is it fair to call him that?
Yeah, I would say, and I could see teams having them graded very similarly, the two, and saying it's okay that speed is probably the most overrated thing when it comes to running back, especially time speed. It almost has no correlation with their success and ability to break off long runs. The most breaking off long runs has to do with your elusiveness and the blocking and the scheme. Because if you can get we saw Joe Mixon's longest run last year against the Steelers. They're in heavy jumbo package, and it's a run right up the middle. Drew Sample, who they just re-signed, gets a nice block, and Mixon's not touched for 50 yards until he gets tackled by Micah Fitzpatrick at the 5-yard line. Anyone could have run that, right? Anyone that runs a 4.55, 4.6 could have had the same success on that same run as long as you hit the timing and hit it at the right
Joe
spot.
Goodberry.
Maybe Joe Goodberry and James Rapien could have hit it and been tackled after 1 yard. But the point is that that's more scheme and situation is how you create explosives. The Bengals being in the shotgun, facing two high shells, I think they need to look for the speed. I think they need to look for the elusive guy to really make defenses pay. So I wonder if how they value the position may have to shift a little bit. Maybe you want the guy that can receive a little bit more and pass block a little bit more, but also maybe you want the guy that has a little bit more speed.
Okay, so let's discuss and kind of wrap things up here because a lot of those guys, Charbonnet doesn't fit that, right?
Right.
And he's a day two guy. Roschon Johnson, I think is fair. He's risen up boards publicly. I think privately, NFL teams just really like him, and he's probably a day two guy. Can they get that speed on day three? Can they get that guy with receiving chops? And is the best path, as weird as it sounds, because really everyone outside of Bijan Robinson seems to have some type of flaw. Do you double dip at running back with only 7 picks? How realistic is that with Joe Mixon's future uncertain?
Yeah, and that's why I led off this segment here with talking about a lot of running back by committee types. And if they're open to it, you can find two guys to pair together. So maybe you do go Charbonnet at 60 or Roschon Johnson in the 3rd round, right? And you say, okay, the next guy, we got to get some speed. And we got to get someone that can help in the passing game as well. Because I think they'd like it if both backs could help in the passing game, right? The other guys that your options are, and we mentioned Abanikanda and Spears, but you also have Chase Brown out of Illinois. You have Devin Achane, who I think is one of the fastest, most explosive guys that could actually probably be a 3rd round pick. Look out for Devin Achane. I think Keaton Mitchell. I think Deuce Vaughn, late ex-Valade guy they brought in. That's 25 years old, but has the speed, elusiveness. Kind of looks like Isaiah Pacheco from last year. So yeah, I do think there's an opportunity to add some elusiveness, some speed, and some receiving ability on day 3 with a handful of these guys. That, yeah, if you double dip there, you can really turn over this running back room pretty quickly.
I think that's overtaken tight end for me as the most likely double dip spot.
Agree.
Oddly enough, because they're all like, even if you get Gibbs, I don't think it rolls out taking a second running back, as weird as that sounds. And just thinking about the combinations, I think the best combination, and I'm not saying they do this, would be Gibbs and Roschon Johnson.
Ooh.
Like, right? That would be the bet. You'd be like, oh, we might have an elite backfield right now. That's not happening. They're not taking Gibbs in round 1, most likely. And trade down, even if that happens, they're not taking Roschon Johnson at 92 then. I think that they would wait. So what's the most realistic, given where they're at, given their makeup, and I'm putting you on the spot here, realistic combo that you would like to see?
Okay, so let's say, I'll give you a couple then. So let's say in round 2, they do go Charbonnet. And then in round 5, they go Keaton Mitchell out of ECU, Eastern Carolina, who is a fast, smaller guy, 5'8", 180, but I mean, absolute blazer, and had the most explosive runs out of anyone in college football last year. He's got the speed, he can catch, he can rip off long runs. Or let's say round 3 is Tyjae Spears, and they like him, and they think he can be the guy that helps their receiving game and the options. I mean, if you watch the Senior Bowl, especially the practices, he's lighting guys up as a route runner. Imagine having that in that Chiefs game where they're doubling both outside receivers, right? Let Spears work in the passing game. And then you mix him with a 6th or 7th rounder, Deneric Prince out of Tulsa, a guy to me that looks like a poor man's Joe Mixon, big back that can run downhill, run over guys, but he ran a 4.45, so he's got a little bit of explosiveness as well. So right, he could be your early down runner, and run out of shotgun, run out wide zone, and then you bring in Tyjae Spears to mix with him as well. I think that would be a fun combo that probably no one's talked about yet.
I'll give you one more.
Okay.
And it's just because, Israel Abanikanda and Deuce Vaughn.
Ooh.
You get the long speed, and then you get the little twitchy pass catcher.
Yeah.
That might be there. He didn't test great, Vaughn.
Right.
I thought he was going to test better. Is he there at 240? Like, he might be there in round 7. Probably round 6 at 206.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you are crazy. And I urge,
he's little.
he is so tiny.
Test well.
Yeah. He's very tiny, and it's hard to test too well when you're that small, right? Like your legs can only go so far. You're only going to run so fast. But when you watch him, he looks fast. He looks agile. He looks elusive. And he almost never fumbles either for a small guy. I think he has the second best only to Roschon Johnson in fumbles per touch. So those two guys if you value that, those are your two guys that maybe you mix those two together, Roschon and Deuce Vaughn. And that would be fun.
That would be fun and realistic, because if you got Roschon at 92 round 3, you could get Deuce Vaughn round 6, and you don't feel like you've spent too much on the position.
Right.
Man, this is fun. See, running backs do matter. For more, make sure you check out Joe Goodberry at Joe Goodberry on Twitter. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. And until next time, for Joe Goodberry and Andrew Fox Miller, our channel coordinator, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching Cincinnati Bengals Talk.